Matthew 5, verses 13 through 20. The Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, beginning with verse 13. If anyone gets too bored, there is a word search in the bulletin too. But if I see all of you looking down, I'm gonna feel bad and cry. Matthew 5, 13. You are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything, but is thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under the bushel basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all the house. And the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they might see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish, but to fulfill. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter, will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Today's scripture lesson provides us with the answer to two fundamental questions. Who are we, and what are we to do? Jesus answers these questions by using metaphors. We are salt, he says. We are light. And he doesn't say we're supposed to become salt or we're supposed to become light. He says we are salt. We are light. So that's what we are made to be. We already are that. We just have to allow ourselves to be who we were created to be by God and to do what we were created to do. So let's look a little closer at what it means to be salt and light. Salt, as an enhancer and preservative, is invaluable. And in Jesus' day, it was also common practice for farmers to salt their fields, to add in the right mix of minerals to help crops grow. The word that we translate as earth is literally ground or dirt. You are the salt of the ground. You are the salt of the dirt. Not a fun job, perhaps, but one that helps things grow. And that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to help other Christians grow. We're supposed to help people grow into who they are created to be. Not to be the center of attention, but to help grow. Likewise, we are light. And light doesn't exist for its own sake. It's about getting people to look at the light, to help them find their way. It's about shining on the path and revealing hazards along the way, about getting where we need to be with a minimum of detours. So, what do we have to do to be salt and light? Well, we have to get out there. We have to get out into the noisy, wonderful, scary, glorious world. In Matthew's time, there was a lot of theological and social tension following the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. The Jewish community was in conflict regarding the future of Judaism and what it meant to be Jewish. Today, the established churches in North America face similar issues. Many values and practices are being questioned or gotten rid of, especially by society at large, but even within the churches. Our congregations are getting smaller, and we're losing social power. So what does it mean to be disciples of Jesus Christ in this kind of setting? How are we to live? We have to let our light shine. And how, in practical ways, can we let our light shine? Well, by doing good works. Covenantal acts of love mercy and justice. Now we need to be clear here that that is not what saves us. We can't earn our way into heaven. But these works are a response to the gifts that we have been given. We show our faith by our works. As James puts it, what good is it, my brothers and sisters, if you say you have faith, but do not have works? Can faith save you? If a brother or sister is naked and lacks daily food, and one of you says to them, go in peace, keep warm and eat your fill, and yet you do not supply their bodily needs, what is the good of that? So faith by itself, if it has no works, is dead. But someone will say, you have faith and I have works. Show me your faith apart from your works, and I by my works will show you my faith. John Wesley, the founder of the Methodist movement, talked about means of grace being divided into works of mercy and works of piety, outward and inward discipleship. We're going to look at works of mercy today, the outward discipleship, which are further divided into individual and communal practices. Some of the individual practices could be doing good works, visiting the sick, visiting those in prison, feeding the hungry, and giving generously to the needs of others. Communal practices are things like seeking justice, ending oppression and discrimination. For instance, Wesley challenged Methodists to end slavery and addressing the needs of the poor. Those works of mercy that John Wesley taught and encouraged, they're actions. They're things that we do. They require us to get outside the church. And then people not of our faith will see these. And they can't help but see these as actions that help humanity. And when they see that we're doing all these actions that help humanity, then maybe they'll come to know God too. Maybe they'll want to join us. And all these are the same values that Jesus emphasized in Matthew 25. That's the verses where he says, for I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. I was naked and you gave me clothing. I was sick and you took care of me. I was in prison and you visited me. So we have to remember that what we do unto the least of these, we do unto Jesus too. But how can we practically live out these values? I want to give you some concrete things that you can consider doing to live out these values on a day-to-day basis. Feeding the hungry. What can we do to feed the hungry? Can we discover who in our community is at risk of hunger and who can join us or who we can join to help them? Well, we have the St. Francis Care and Share right here. So we can join in with them and contribute to the food pantry there. That's one thing we can do. You can even pay it forward if you're in line at a drive-thru and you want to pay for the person behind you. It's just a simple thing you can do. Clothing the naked. Can you supply warm coats or jackets to people whose clothing is inadequate for the weather? And you know, we collected the scarves and the gloves and all that. That's one thing to do to clothe people. And Luke, Jesus said, whoever has 2 coats must share with anyone who has none. And whoever has food must do likewise. How can we care for the sick? Can we drive people to doctor's appointments? That's one way to care for the sick. Can we provide respite care? Can we sit with somebody who's sick while their caregiver goes out and does something else? That's another way. How can we visit those in prison? Well, if we can physically visit people in prison, that's good too, just to sit with them and let them know they're not forgotten. But if we're not able to do that, what about writing letters? Can we write letters to prisoners to let them know that they're not forgotten? Can we donate books to prisoners? There's an organization in Pittsburgh called Bookham that's run out of the Thomas Merton Center that collects books to send to prisoners. Prisoners have a lot of time on their hands, and books are a blessing to them. Sheltering the homeless. When it's warming stations and sub-zero temperatures. Isaiah says, "Is not this the fast that I choose? To loose the bonds of injustice, to undo the thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke? Is it not to share your bread with the hungry, and bring the homeless poor into your house? When you see the naked, to cover them, and not to hide yourself from your own kin." How can we welcome the stranger? Can you befriend a lonely newcomer to your town who needs a new friend? That's one way to welcome the stranger, and it's important we do that. Deuteronomy says, "You shall also love the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt." Peacemaking. And this can start with something as simple as just walking around our neighborhood and just seeing the people and starting conversations. This is peacemaking. And Jesus says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." Romans tells us to pursue what makes for peace and for mutual upbuilding. We could go to or start meetups. We can talk to people at coffee shops, or even when we're just standing in the line at the store, you can brighten up someone's day and bring peace to their day as well. Serving the common good. I'm sure you can think of one thing, just one thing that you can do that will help everyone. James says, "Religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this, to care for orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself unstained by the world." Proverbs tells us to speak out for those who cannot speak, and the rights of all the destitute. Speak out, judge righteously, defend the rights of the poor and needy. So that's why part of Christianity is activism and social justice. These are things that we need to do. That the prophets told us to do it. Jesus tells us to do it. Hebrews says, "Do not neglect to do good and to share what you have, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God." And remember, the Christians in Acts shared everything that they had in common. We need to share with each other. It sounds simple, but it's actually a big thing we can do, just sharing. And then last week we talked about Micah 6:8, where it tells us pretty plainly what God expects of us. To do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God. So those are some concrete actions we can take to let our light shine. And we have to remember that letting our light shine requires us to go out and to do actions. And then as we continue in our passage, verses 17 through 20 further specify what it means to be salt and light. How does a community live in anticipation of the kingdom of heaven? By following the law, the Torah. For Matthew, to fulfill the law and the prophets is to bring their purposes to complete expression in everyday community. Jesus came not to abolish the law, but to fulfill it, to fulfill the law and the prophets. That Jesus rejected the agenda of the Pharisees doesn't mean he rejected the Torah. It means he read it and practiced it from a different perspective than the Pharisees were doing it. So we need to obey the law and read it from Jesus' perspective. Jesus read Torah no longer in the context of sin, but in the context of the kingdom. The measure was no longer human pettiness, but the abundance of God's righteousness. And today we must seek to live righteously in ways consistent with the interpretation of the law that Jesus provides. And this way we will be fulfilling God's will and being who he made us to be. Salt, light. Given all this, we need to live with grace and hospitality and kindness. It's okay to have opinions about how the world ought to be, but how we express them matters. So let's celebrate the ones who already are supporting and guiding others, the teachers, the youth leaders, the greeters, These people are salt and light. So let us be salt of the earth. Let us be the light. Let us be who God created us to be.